Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. I wanted to do a quick book review of this children's book, The Phantom Tollbooth. Just finished it yesterday. Took me about 3 days to read it. This was published by Scholastic, and this, in a lot of ways, is like a nostalgic read for me, but it's not nostalgic because I never read this book until right now that I'm in my 60s. This book was published in the early 1960s, so this would have been available in my school library. I probably could have ordered it from Scholastic Book Club. I never got around to reading it. The cover is somewhat familiar to me, but I don't have a memory of this book from being a kid. I have friends who have very vivid memories of it, and they were talking about it recently, and that's what got me interested in reading it. So I found this on eBay at a nice cheap price and just devoured it. And I really love this book. So I wanted to share my quick impressions of it and invite you to talk about The Phantom Tollbooth. If you have memories of reading this book, or you've read it recently, or you recommend it, talk about it in the comments. Anyway, what is this book about? It's like it's a kind of an imaginary quest narrative about a boy, Milo, who is a bit of he seems to be kind of a listless, bored boy. He lives in the city in an apartment house, and he's just kind of drifting. He's not really into his classes, and he's just kind of, meh. And he comes back to his room and he sees this package for him, and it's a phantom toll booth that he puts together. And when he goes, pays his fare for this phantom toll booth, he then goes on this imaginary journey. And we have a road map of where he goes. I'll show this to you. So basically, you're journeying through all these imaginary places: the doldrums, the Dictionopolis, the foothills of confusion, forest of sight, the valley of sound, the sea of knowledge, Digitopolis, the mountains of ignorance, the castle in the air, and so on and so forth. And along the way, Milo, who has a little car he's driving, he meets up with the various characters, and the sidekick characters are primarily Talk, this dog with a clock attached to him, and then the Humbug is the other main sidekick. But there's a whole cast of characters he encounters, and they're all very, very entertaining. And basically, this is the sense I got as I was reading the book. I immediately grasped this because of what was happening. This book is an allegory. This book is allegory. Allegory. So what is allegory? It's symbolic narrative, right? So basically, the characters, so many of the characters and the place names here are meant to symbolize something. So as you can tell from the road map, this is a quest narrative, an imaginative quest, imaginary fantasy quest narrative that's really about learning. It's about the places you go as you acquire knowledge, and the pitfalls that can happen along the way, the the different traps that you can get into. But it's all done with a very light touch. It's extremely witty. It's filled with wordplay and puns, and turning around cliches, and just having so much fun with it. I just love the way Norton Juster wrote this book. It's just extremely fun to read. And it just brings a smile to your face as you're going along. I'll try to pick out a passage as we go along here so you can get a feel for it. Okay, I'm going to read you an excerpt from chapter 5 here, and this is called Short Shrift. And listen for the allegorical style, like the character names, the symbolism behind them, but also listen for the wordplay, the wit, the surrealism of this fantasy journey, this quest. And you'll also get a little bit into the backstory, which kind of is the hinge for the whole plot. Like, what are they questing after? Anyway, Short Shrift is the little policeman, and he has this to say. You, said the policeman, pointing an accusing finger at the humbug who was brushing himself off and straightening his hat. You look suspicious to me. The startled humbug dropped his cane and nervously replied, "Let me assure you, sir, on my honor as a gentleman, that I was merely an innocent bystander, minding my own business, enjoying the stimulating sights and sounds of the world of commerce, when this young lad—" Aha! Interrupted Officer Shrift, making another illustration. Another note in his little book. "Just as I thought, boys are the cause of everything." "Pardon me," insisted the humbug, "but I in no way meant to imply that—" "Silence!" thundered the policeman, pulling himself up to full height and glaring menacingly at the terrified bug. "And now," he continued, speaking to Milo, "where were you on the night of July 27th? "What does that have to do with it?" asked Milo. "It's my birthday, that's what," said the policeman as he entered "Forgot my birthday" in his little book. Boys always forget other people's birthdays. "You have committed the following crimes," he continued: "having a dog with an unauthorized alarm, sowing confusion, upsetting the apple cart, wreaking havoc, and mincing words." "Now see here," growled Tock angrily. "And illegal barking," he added, frowning at the watchdog. "It's against the law to bark without using the barking meter." The barking meter. "Are you ready to be sentenced?" "Only a judge can sentence you," said Milo, who remembered reading that in one of his school books. "Good point," replied the policeman, taking off his cap and putting on a long black robe. "I am also the judge. Now, would you like a long or a short sentence?" "A short one, if you please," said Milo. "Good," said the judge, rapping his gavel 3 times. "I always have trouble remembering the long ones. How about I am? That's the shortest I know." There's just like these odd little gestures like that. Like, well, it makes you think. I am as a sentence. It's a sentence as a punishment, but it's also literally a very short sentence. Everyone agreed that it was a very fair sentence, and the judge continued, "There will also be a small additional penalty of 6 million years in prison." "Come with me, I'll take you to the dungeon." "Only a jailer can put you in prison," offered Milo, quoting the same book. "Good point," said the judge, removing his robe and taking out a large bunch of keys. "I am also the jailer." And with that, he led them away. "Keep your chin up," shouted the humbug. "Maybe it'll take 1 million years off for good behavior." And they go down into the dungeon. But you can see, like, on a lot of different levels, what's happening here. Like, there's actually a little social point being made here, too, how the policeman is also the judge, who's also the jailer. There's this kind of continuity of system of power, or it's kind of like a Foucaultian power dynamic here, where like the same character plays all these different roles. So on an allegorical level, you have something happening there that's just very subtle. It's probably going to go over most kids' heads, but it's there. And it's all done in a sort of spirit of fun here. So they go down into the dungeon, and then they encounter um, um, a witch, and it's an old lady, and she says, "Don't be frightened." She laughed. "I'm not a witch. I'm a witch." So I'm not a W-I-T-C-H. I'm a W-H-I-C-H. More punning here. "Oh," said Milo, because he couldn't think of anything else to say. "I'm faintly macabre, the not-so-wicked witch," she continued, "and I'm certainly not going to harm you." Faintly macabre, another allegorical character name. "What's a witch?" asked Milo, releasing Talk and stepping a little closer. "Well," said the old lady, just as a rat scurried across her foot, "I am the king's great aunt. For years and years I was in charge of choosing which words were to be used for all occasions, which ones to say and which ones not to say, which ones to write and which ones not to write. As you can well imagine, with all the thousands to choose from, it was a most important and responsible job. I was given the title of official witch, W-H-I-C-H, which made me very proud and happy. At first I did my best to make sure that only the most proper and fitting words were used. Everything was said clearly and simply, and no words were wasted. I had signs posted all over the palace and marketplace which said, 'Brevity is the soul of wit, but power corrupts,' and soon I grew miserly and chose fewer and fewer words, trying to keep as many possible for myself. I had new signs posted which said, 'An ill-chosen word is the fool's messenger.' Soon sales began to fall off in the market. The people were afraid to buy as many words as before, and hard times came to the kingdom. But still I grew more and more miserly. Soon there were so few words chosen that hardly anything could be said, and even casual conversation became difficult. Again, I had new signs posted which said, 'Speak fitly,' or 'Be silent wisely.' And finally, I had even these replaced by ones which read simply, 'Silence is golden.'" All talk stopped. No words were sold. The marketplace closed down, and the people grew poor and disconsolate. When the king saw what had happened, he became furious and had me cast into this dungeon, where you see me now, an older and wiser woman. That was all many years ago," she continued, "but they never appointed a new witch, and that explains why today people use as many words as they can and think themselves very wise for doing so. For always remember that while it is wrong to use too few, it is often far worse to use too many." So you get these little words of wisdom along the way, too, which is fun. When she had finished, she sighed deeply, patted Milo gently on the shoulder, and began knitting once again. "And have you been down here ever since then?" asked Milo sympathetically. "Yes," she said sadly. "Most people have forgotten me entirely, or remember me wrongly as a witch, not a witch. But it matters not, she went on unhappily, for they are equally frightened of both." "I don't think you're frightening," said Milo, and Talk wagged his tail in agreement. "I thank you very much," said Faintly Macabre. "You may call me Aunt Faintly. Have a punctuation mark." And she held out a box of sugar-coated question marks, periods, commas, and exclamation points. "That's all I get to eat now." "Well, when I get out of here, I'm going to help you," Milo declared forcefully. "That's very nice of you," she replied, "but the only thing that can help me is the return of rhyme and reason." "The return of what?" asked Milo. "Rhyme and reason," she repeated, "but that's another long story, and you may not want to hear it." "We would like to very much," barked Talk. "We really would," agreed Milo, and as the witch rocked slowly back and forth, she told them this story. And here is the backstory that leads to the search for rhyme and reason. And so Milo and his sidekicks are going to quest to find them and release them. Once upon a time, this land was a barren and frightening wilderness, whose high rocky mountains sheltered the evil winds, and whose barren valleys offered hospitality to no man. Few things grew, and those that did were bent and twisted, and their fruit was as bitter as wormwood. What wasn't waste was desert, and what wasn't desert was rock. And the demons of darkness made their home in the hills. Evil creatures roamed at will through the countryside and down to the sea. It was known as the land of Null, Null. Then one day a small ship appeared on the sea of knowledge. It carried a young prince seeking the future. In the name of goodness and truth, he laid claim to all the country and set out to explore his new domain. The demons, monsters, and giants were furious at his presumption and banded together to drive him out. The earth shook with their battle, and when they had finished, all that remained to the prince was a small piece of land at the edge of the sea. "I'll build my city here," he declared, and that is what he did. Before long, more ships came bearing settlers for the new land, and the city grew and pushed its boundaries farther and farther out. Each day it was attacked anew, but nothing could destroy the prince's new city. And grow it did. Soon it was no longer just a city, it was a kingdom, and it was called the Kingdom of Wisdom. You hear the allegory? Sea of knowledge, kingdom of wisdom, Null. But outside the walls, all was not safe, and the new king vowed to conquer the land that was rightfully his. So each spring he set forth with his army, and each autumn he returned, and year by year the kingdom grew larger and more prosperous. He took to himself a wife, and before long had 2 fine young sons, to whom he taught everything he knew, so that one day they might rule wisely. When the boys grew to young manhood, the king called them to him and said, "I am becoming an old man and can no longer go forth to battle. You must take my place and found new cities in the wilderness, for the kingdom of wisdom must grow." And so they did. One went south to the foothills of confusion and built Dictionopolis, the city of words, and one went north to the mountains of ignorance and built Digitopolis, the city of numbers. Both cities flourished mightily, and the demons were driven back still further. Soon other cities and towns were founded in the new lands, and at last only the farthest reaches of the wilderness remained to these terrible creatures, and there they waited, ready to strike down all who ventured near or relaxed their guard. The 2 brothers were glad, however, to go their separate ways, for they were by nature very suspicious and jealous. Each one tried to outdo the other, and they worked so hard and diligently at it that before long their cities rivaled even wisdom in size and grandeur. "Words are more important than wisdom," said one privately. "Numbers are more important than wisdom," thought the other to himself, and they grew to dislike each other more and more. The old king, however, who knew nothing of his son's animosity, was very happy in the twilight of his reign, and spent his days quietly walking and contemplating in the royal gardens. His only regret was that he'd never had a daughter, for he loved little girls as much as he loved little boys. One day, as he was strolling peacefully about the grounds, he discovered 2 tiny babies that had been abandoned in a basket under the grape arbor. They were beautiful golden-haired girls. The king was overjoyed. "They have been sent to crown my old age," he cried, and called the queen, his ministers, and palace staff, and indeed the entire population, to see them. "We'll call this one Rhyme and this one Reason," he said, and so they became the Princess of Sweet Rhyme and the Princess of Pure Reason, and were brought up in the palace. When the old king finally died, the kingdom was divided between his 2 sons, with the provision that they would be equally responsible for the welfare of the young princesses. One son went south and became Azaz, the unabridged king of Dictionopolis, and the other went north and became the mathemagician, ruler of Digitopolis. And true to their words, they both provided well for the little girls who continued to live in wisdom. You see how all the concepts are stitched together. Everyone loved the princesses because of their great beauty, their gentle ways, and their ability to settle all controversies fairly and reasonably. People with problems or grievances or arguments came from all over the land to seek advice, and even the two brothers, who by this time were fighting continuously, often called upon them to help decide matters of state. It was said by everyone that rhyme and reason answer all problems. As the years passed, the two brothers grew farther and farther apart, and their separate kingdoms became richer and grander. Their disputes, however, became more and more difficult to reconcile, but always with patience and love the princesses set things right. Then one day they had the most terrible quarrel of all. King Azaz insisted that words were far more significant than numbers, and hence his kingdom was truly the greater, and Mathemagician claimed that numbers were more important than words, and hence his kingdom was supreme. They discussed and debated and raved and ranted until they were on the verge of blows, when it was decided to submit the question to arbitration by the princesses. After days of careful consideration, in which all the evidence was weighed and all the witnesses heard, they made their decision. Words and numbers are of equal value, for in the cloak of knowledge one is warp and the other woof. It is no more important to count the sands than it is to name the stars. Therefore, let both kingdoms live in peace. This is one of the messages of the book, like the balance between, numbers and words, like the equilibrium of all that. Everyone was pleased with the verdict, everyone, that is, but the brothers, who were beside themselves with anger. What good are these girls if they cannot settle an argument in someone's favor? They growled, since both were more interested in their own advantage than in the truth. We'll banish them from the kingdom forever. And so they were taken from the palace and sent far away to the castle in the air, and they have not been seen since. That is why today, in all this land, there is neither rhyme nor reason. And so the quest becomes a quest to restore order to this disrupted world. And I just love this allegory. You know what this made me think of? It made me think of a book I read not too long ago, and that is The Pilgrim's Progress of John Bunyan. Like, this is like a children's literature version in a secular kind of knowledge symbolism way of what John Bunyan does in The Pilgrim's Progress, which is a Christian allegory. But the allegorical mechanism works exactly the same. It's exactly the same. But this is all about learning, knowledge acquisition, education, words, numbers, reading, mathematics. It's done with such a light touch. It's a very charming book. It's very witty. If you love wordplay, if you love puns, you're going to be entertained by this book. And it really does take you someplace. And, when I got to the end of the narrative, it has a really nice ending, he comes back after his long journey, back to his house, and then, I won't spoil the ending, but it's touching. And, it was very, it's done with just the right touch, I thought. I was very impressed at the prose style. I wonder if this book is still taught today. I wonder what grades this is appropriate for, because it seems to me like I wonder I wonder in today's educational climate, like what kind of kids would latch on to a book like this. I think it's a classic. I think it's got to be a book that, should be required reading almost, um, especially for kids who don't really know why they're in school or what they're there for. Like they could be very entranced by this narrative because it gives them reasons to want to learn. And that I found very touching in itself. This is why we read books. This is why we work on difficult subjects and try to learn more about them and expose ourselves to new things and different disciplines, not just to like narrowcast into some, laser focused kind of specialty, but we want to broaden our horizons and, cover this whole world of knowledge as best we can. And, yeah, I was just really entranced by it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know I'm late to the party. I know this is I'm pretty sure this is a famous book. I'm pretty sure it's still in print. I'd love to know from any of you teachers out there whether this is still a popular book with kids, whether it's still being taught. Have no clue. I have no clue. The only evidence is some friends of mine really loved it when they were kids. One friend of mine who's a school teacher has taught it. But yeah, and the Jules Feiffer illustrations, classic. He's a very famous cartoonist. That cover looks familiar to me. But then again, Jules Feiffer's work was on a lot of books and in magazines, so I might just be like not remembering this correctly. But that's the Phantom Tollbooth. It is an allegory of knowledge and learning, and it's for kids. But I think it's for the kids in all of us. Anybody who's at any age, I think, could get something out of this and enjoy it. So I'm really glad I picked it up. And I wanted to talk about it with you all and recommend it. So let me know if you know this book and if you loved it, what you loved about it. And please weigh in the comments. Always great talking to you. And I hope you'll get a chance to borrow this book or pick a copy up and let me know what you think after you read it. The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster with illustrations by Jules Feiffer, published by Scholastic. That's all for now. Bye-bye.